There are moments when pain doesn't scream, doesn't bring tears. It freezes, solidifying deep within the chest, silently eroding us from the inside. But then there's an embrace, seemingly the last anchor that unintentionally becomes the final period to a chapter of life. I clearly remember her embrace that day. It was the last light before my life plunged into darkness, an unspoken farewell to a marriage I thought would last forever. Hey everyone, Levi here, and it's great to connect with you all again in this quiet space. I hope you've been doing well, staying healthy, and that work has been treating you kindly. Life sometimes throws curveballs we never see coming, doesn't it? Today I'm not here to tell you a fairy tale or a romantic ballad, but a genuine slice from my own life. It's a story that, while not filled with sensational plot twists like a movie, holds deep secrets and silent mistakes that perhaps some of us have also experienced. Join me as I share in the stillness of the night my own unfinished love song, where every sigh, every moment of quiet is filled with things left unsaid. I still remember her embrace that day. It wasn't the passionate, warm hug of our early days of love, nor was it the hurried embrace each morning before work. It was a silent, tight embrace as the bleak wind whistled through the ancient cypress trees and the faint smell of incense still clung to my hands, cold and haunting. That day was my mother's funeral. Mom, the woman who dedicated her entire life to loving and sacrificing for me, was now just cold earth. Each handful of soil falling onto the coffin felt like a hammer blow to my heart. My whole world seemed to collapse beneath my feet. The pain was too immense, too overwhelming, so much so that I couldn't cry. The tears wouldn't flow, as if they had frozen into a solid block deep within my heart, thick and heavy. I stood there utterly alone amidst the grieving crowd, feeling like a boat adrift in a stormy ocean with no anchor, no glimmer of light. Then she came. Gianna, my wife. She didn't say a word. She simply wrapped her arms tightly around me from behind. That embrace wasn't a soft, delicate one, but a firm hold, a powerful connection. My back pressed against her chest, feeling every beat of her heart, every steady breath. In the coldness of the world and the emptiness of my soul, Gianna's embrace was the only place I felt warm, a tiny spark of light in the profound darkness. I thought it was an expression of love, of empathy, of a wife ready to brave any storm with her husband. I clung to that embrace like a last lifeline. I had no idea it was also the final embrace, the farewell hug to a marriage I had once believed would be eternal. It was like the last note of a sad song, echoing then fading into silence, leaving behind a terrifying quiet. I returned home after the funeral, my mind floating in midair, all my senses hazy, heavy. The house was still the same, tidy, cozy. She was still there, still cooking my favorite dishes, still keeping the house organized. Every evening she would gently ask if I could sleep, if I wanted anything else to eat. These familiar, caring actions made me believe that no matter how great the pain of losing my mother, we still had each other. I thought it was a shared sadness, the exhaustion of two people who had just experienced a great loss. I was too engrossed in my own sorrow to notice that something was different. A subtle difference, an invisible distance creeping between us, even though she was right there, right next to me. I was too oblivious, too preoccupied with my own pain to notice the chilling signs, the warning bells ringing constantly. I didn't know. That was her final retreat and ultimate suppression of emotions before she completely left. She stayed for me for the funeral for the sake of our marriage, but her heart had already begun its first steps out of this marriage a long time ago. It was like a rubber band stretched to its limit, just waiting for a small touch to snap, unable to be mended. A week later, the smell of incense had faded from the air, but the pain in my heart remained. Life seemed to be trying to return to its orbit, albeit awkwardly, reluctantly. We were having breakfast. The meal passed in an unusual silence, a heavy quiet unlike the noisy, laughter-filled mornings of Luna in the past, the clink of cutlery against porcelain, the birds singing outside the window, the hurried traffic outside. Everything became disturbingly clear and sharp, as if the universe was trying to amplify every smallest sound to force me to face the impending truth. We sat opposite each other at the dining table that had witnessed so much laughter, so many stories now becoming the scene of a fateful moment. Then she gently put her spoon down. The faint clink echoed in my ears like a clap of thunder, startling me. She looked at me. Her clear blue eyes now no longer sparkled with life or a glimmer of hope. They were heartbreakingly empty, an emptiness I had never seen before. It was the look of someone utterly exhausted who had given up all hope. I want a divorce. Those three words, soft, decisive, like a knife plunging straight into my heart. I thought I misheard. My brain stopped working. The whole world spun. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. A divorce. Right now, I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. Her voice trembled, but her eyes held a terrifying resolve. That resolve was more painful than any accusation. I was stunned, couldn't utter a word. The whole world collapsed once again. Just a week ago I buried my mother, and now I was about to lose my wife too. An ultimate fear squeezed my throat. It wasn't the scream of anger, but the silence of someone who had just received another fatal blow to an already shattered place. I tried to find my voice, but only a soft moan escaped, painful and helpless. "Why now, when I'm weakest? When I need you most?" I asked, my voice hoarse, bitter, as if the words were squeezed from the depths of my being, filled with hurt and confusion. Her eyes welled up and tears began to roll down her cheeks. These were the tears I hadn't seen her cry throughout my mother's funeral. "It's because you always hid your weakness, always endured alone," she said, her voice choked and trembling. "And I no longer have the strength to keep trying to reach someone who never opens up, no longer strong enough to carry my own loneliness in this relationship." Her tears fell, the first tears I saw her cry after my mother's death. Those tears weren't a sign of weakness, but of release, the ultimate helplessness of someone who had tried too hard. They were like unspoken accusations piercing my very soul. "I had planned to tell you before, but your mother passed away. I couldn't say it then. I stayed for the funeral, for you, but I know. I left in my heart a long time ago." Her confession hit me like a massive iceberg. Left in her heart a long time ago. Was I so foolish, so engrossed in my own world that I didn't realize it? Our entire marriage, the years I thought were perfectly happy, now crumbled like a sandcastle. The signs, the warning bells I had deliberately ignored, all of them, now stood starkly clear. I looked back, and the pieces began to fit together cruelly, forming a complete picture of distance, of what had rotted from within. She slept with her back to me for months. Sometimes I tried to hug her, but she would just stiffen, then gently push me away with a tiny sigh. I thought she was tired or simply needed her space. I never asked. Every time I tried to touch her, she unconsciously flinched away. Physical distance gradually became emotional distance, an invisible wall that kept growing taller between us. She stopped talking about work. Gianna was a dynamic woman, always full of interesting stories about her job, her colleagues, her architectural dreams, but at some point those stories vanished. Instead, there were indifferent nods, terse replies of, "It's fine, nothing special." When did her enthusiasm die out? Every evening passed without a greeting, without a kiss. The goodnight kiss, the touch of hands while watching movies. The small intimate gestures had gradually disappeared, replaced by silence, loneliness, and my sigh every time she turned away. I thought it was life's pressure, or fatigue from both our jobs, or the busyness of adulthood. I reassured myself that all couples go through such phases, that everything would be okay once the pressure passed. I blatantly deceived myself, but in reality, those were cries for help that were ignored. Warnings I was too blind to see. The alarm bells of a marriage rotting from within, and I, with my blind confidence, was completely unaware. I was too focused on my own fears, on maintaining the image of a strong man, carrying everything, that I forgot to listen to the woman who was slowly drifting away from me each day. I didn't see the pleading in her eyes, didn't hear the silent cries of her soul. Divorce amidst mourning. It was like a punch to the chest when your ribs are already broken. It wasn't just the ultimate pain of loss, but the shock, the helplessness when every support system crumbled at once. Mom passed away, leaving an irreplaceable void. And Gianna left, taking a part of my life with her, taking my belief in a future I had painstakingly built. The house suddenly became cold. Happy memories flashed, then faded, leaving only emptiness and ultimate loneliness. I felt abandoned, lost amidst the wreckage of my life. In the days that followed, I lived like a ghost. This double loss almost paralyzed me. I could no longer think, no longer had the energy to do anything. Every night I woke up, calling Mom, then realizing Mom wasn't there. My heart tightened, my chest ached, the air seemed to be sucked out of me. I turned to my side and saw an empty bed. No one at all. The entire large house was just me and the echo of loneliness, the wind howling through the window like fate's lament. Looking back, I realized our marriage had begun to crack long ago. Not just after my mother's death. Everything was just skillfully covered by the facade of a perfect family I tried to build. Years ago, I was a young, ambitious man throwing myself into work with the strong belief that success would bring happiness. I wanted to ensure Gianna and Luna had a fulfilling, prosperous life so they wouldn't have to worry about anything material. I spent most of my time at the office, often coming home late and sometimes even bringing work home to put in extra hours. I always told myself I was doing everything for my family, for my child's future. I thought that bearing all the financial pressure, all of life's burdens, was my way of showing love and responsibility as a husband and father. I was proud of being able to solve every problem, hide every difficulty, and always appear before Gianna as a strong man with no weaknesses. I believed that would make her feel secure and happy, but it was my pride and fear of failure that made me isolated in my own relationship. I never shared my pressures, failures, or fears with Gianna. Whenever I faced difficulties, I chose to endure them alone, keeping everything deep inside, creating a perfect image of myself that I didn't truly possess. At first, Gianna seemed to understand and sympathize. She was also busy with her architectural work with her passionate projects. She took care of Luna, managed the house. We had little real time for each other. Our dates became less frequent, deep conversations became a thing of the past. I thought it was just a phase all couples go through when they have a child and a career. But then the silence between us grew larger. Conversations revolved only around our child work or trivial daily matters. We no longer shared our dreams, our fears, or our true feelings. I had built an invisible wall between myself and Gianna, a wall built of pride, fear, and small lies. I remember once Gianna told me, "You seem so distant, Levi. I feel like you're putting up a front." But I dismissed it, saying she was overthinking. I didn't realize she was actually trying to reach out, trying to break down the wall I had built. Instead of listening, I continued to hide, continued to believe I was protecting her from my pressures. Gradually, Gianna's eyes became empty. Her caring questions grew fewer, and she also began to retreat into her own world. We still lived in the same house, still fulfilled our marital duties, but our hearts grew further apart. Our marriage didn't die from a big argument, but slowly withered from silence, from skillfully hidden lies, and from a husband who didn't dare to be true to himself. Luna, my daughter, was taken to her grandparents' house by Gianna right after the divorce proposal. She said the child needed a quieter space, needed to be cared for by people with a stronger spirit than mine at that time. I didn't object. I knew I couldn't take good care of her in such a chaotic and broken mental state. I was even afraid of my child's innocent eyes, afraid she would see the brokenness of the father she once trusted. That hurt me even more. I had not only lost my wife, lost my mother, but also felt like I was losing my right to be a father, losing the joy of seeing my child every day. I received the divorce papers on a drizzly afternoon. The raindrops hitting the window were like fate's tears. Not many lines. My name. Her name. A signed date. But to me, it was an obituary for my old life. An obituary for dreams, for hopes, for everything I had once believed about a perfect family. I looked at it, no tears, no anger, only a heavy acceptance, an extreme weariness, a feeling that everything I had tried to achieve had vanished into thin air. I signed. Not because I agreed, not because I accepted defeat, but because I knew. Love cannot be begged for. You can't hold on to someone who has decided to leave when their heart has grown cold. Every plea, every promise now became meaningless when trust was depleted, when the invisible wall was too high to cross. I had the chance to speak, to explain, to make amends, but I chose silence, chose to hide. And this was the price of my pride and fear. After all the divorce procedures were finalized, the house became terrifyingly empty. My footsteps echoed in the hallway. The kitchen was cold. The sofa where we used to watch movies was now just an inanimate object. Loneliness enveloped me, gnawing at me bit by bit. I didn't rush into a new relationship to find comfort. I didn't drink to forget my sorrows. I didn't get angry, didn't smash anything. I sat and breathed. Took a deep breath, feeling my lungs fill with air, then slowly exhaled, trying to push away all the pain that was overwhelming me, all the regret that was weighing me down. I sat there in the absolute silence of the empty house, listening to my heartbeat, listening to the clock's hands tick by, counting down the time I had left with loneliness. The nights became a nightmare. I frequently woke up in a state of panic, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. I found myself lost in a maze with no exit, where my lies turned into towering walls, isolating me from everyone. I saw faint images of my mother in the mist, then they disappeared. I saw Gianna standing far away, her back to me, and no matter how hoarsely I called her name, she wouldn't turn around. The fear of loss enveloped me, plunging me into darkness. But it was in those most desperate moments that a tiny light began to flicker. It wasn't a sudden awakening, but a slow, painful process. I started writing in a journal every night. Not overflowing with emotion, but short, dry sentences like cold pebbles falling into a calm lake. I wrote about what I had been through, about my pain, about my mistakes. Mom, I'm learning to endure alone. Everything is so hard, but I will try. I miss you so much. I miss your advice, your warm hugs. Gianna, I understand why you left. I was so oblivious, so selfish, didn't give you the chance to face difficulties with me. You don't need a deceitful man like me, and I realized that too late. I don't hate you, just regret. Regret that we couldn't overcome the storm together. Regret that I didn't realize sooner, wasn't brave enough to open up, to share. Love is not a battlefield where one person has to carry everything and hide weakness. Love is a home where everyone builds together, shares burdens together. And I destroyed it with my own hands, with lies, with my silence. Writing became a form of therapy. Every word was a burden lifted, even if just a little. It helped me confront negative emotions, not run from them, but accept them as part of the healing process. I realized that only by facing the truth, no matter how painful, could I truly begin to recover. My healing journey wasn't about finding ways to fill the void or escape the pain. It was a process of directly confronting myself, my losses, my mistakes, and accepting that life doesn't always go as planned. I didn't rush into quick fixes, but sought peace and strength from within. The first thing I did was clean the house, not just the physical space, but also the memories, the objects that had become too heavy. I didn't throw everything away, but put away my mother's and Gianna's mementos into a separate box placed in a corner of the closet. I wanted them to be memories, not burdens. I repainted the bedroom myself, changing the color from a deep tone to a soft blue like the sky after a rain. Each brushstroke on the wall was a reminder of change, of a new beginning. I started meditating, not complex sessions, but simply sitting in silence every morning, listening to my breath, feeling my presence in the present moment. I focused on the sounds of life around me, birds singing, wind rustling through leaves, flowing water. Gradually, I learned to keep my mind from wandering to negative thoughts, persistent regrets. Meditation helped me find a deep inner peace, a refuge when everything around me became too chaotic. I rediscovered old hobbies that had been forgotten in the whirlwind of work and family. Back then, I loved photography. I rummaged for my old dusty camera in the back of the closet. Every late afternoon, I would take my camera out, wandering through familiar streets, parks, riverbanks. I captured everyday moments, flowers blooming after a rain, sunlight filtering through leaves, a child's smile. Seeing the world through the camera lens helped me focus on the beauty of the present, on the small things I had missed before. I was no longer afraid to confront my emotions, but learned to record them through each photograph as a way to release and accept. I also learned to cook. Before, all the cooking was done by Gianna. Now I had to do everything myself. At first I was clumsy, food burned. Some dishes were too salty, but gradually I began to enjoy the process. I searched for new recipes, experimented with different dishes. Every time I finished a delicious meal, I felt a small joy, a pride in my self-sufficiency. I realized that taking care of myself and my home was an important part of the healing process. It helped me find balance in my life. I often called Luna. At first I was hesitant, scared, unsure how to face her after everything. But then Luna's clear, innocent voice became the only ray of light piercing through my darkness. I listened to her tell stories about school, about playing with friends. I tried not to let my sadness affect her. Sometimes I would hear Gianna's voice on the other end. She would remind Luna not to bother me for too long. But now I no longer felt alienated. I knew Gianna was trying to create space for me and our daughter in the way she thought was best. I also started spending more time with my dad. After my mother's death, I realized that no matter how busy life got, family was the most important thing. I visited Dad more often, sat with him watching the news, drank tea with him, and chatted. I told Dad about work, about difficulties, about the emotions I was going through. My dad, a man of few words, usually just listened silently, but his eyes always watched me, full of concern and worry. One evening, as I sat next to Dad on the old sofa, he gently placed his hand on my shoulder. His hand was calloused, warm. "Son," he said softly, his voice deep and warm, "your mother is gone. Both you and she have suffered a lot. But remember, life must go on. You don't have to be strong alone. I'm always here." Those words, non-judgmental, purely acceptance and unconditional love, made me cry. Tears not of pain, but of release, of comfort in being loved and understood. I hugged Dad tightly, feeling his warmth transfer to me like a healing current. In that embrace, I felt the peace I had been searching for all this time. I realized that the love from family, especially from my dad, was the strongest medicine to soothe emotional wounds. It helped me overcome loneliness and the feeling of abandonment. After the divorce, I still regularly visited Luna at Gianna's parents' house. Although we were no longer married, we tried to maintain a friendly relationship because Luna deserved to have both her parents. I didn't want her to suffer any more trauma from our breakup. Those initial meetings were very awkward. We made small talk, mostly about our daughter. I still saw a distance in Gianna's eyes, an invisible wall she had built to protect herself. Her eyes no longer held anger, but also no longer the warmth of the past. There was only emptiness, cold acceptance. Though it pained me, I understood and respected that. I didn't expect immediate forgiveness. I just wanted to prove that I was changing, not for her, but because I wanted to become a better version of myself, because I wanted a truthful and peaceful life. One time, as I was returning Luna after a weekend outing, she ran to hug her mother tightly. I stood there watching the two most important women in my life. In that moment, I suddenly realized something important. Gianna looked at me, her gaze still cold, but I saw something had shifted. Maybe it was a hint of understanding and acceptance that I was trying. She didn't say anything, just nodded gently. I knew it was a small sign, a very subtle door that had just opened, allowing me to hope for a future that wasn't necessarily love, but respect and peace between two people who once were everything to each other. I also realized that Gianna's departure, though painful, was actually a catalyst for me to confront the deeper issues within myself. The fear of failure, the pride of a man, the pressure to always be perfect, all these things had held me back, preventing me from being true to myself. Now, with everything having crumbled, I had nothing left to lose. It was a strange liberation. I no longer had to put on a brave face, no longer had to wear a mask. I could be myself with all my flaws, all my scars. I started attending workshops on psychology, on building healthy relationships. I read books on communication, on empathy. I wanted to better understand the mistakes I had made and how to avoid repeating them in the future. I realized that communication isn't just about speaking, but also about listening, about understanding what's left unsaid. In one therapy session, the therapist asked me a seemingly simple question that made me think a lot. Levi, have you ever asked Gianna what she needed, or did you simply give her what you thought she needed? That question was like an electric shock. I realized that I had always imposed my thoughts on Gianna, believing that protecting her from financial difficulties, from life's pressures, was the best way to show my love. But I had never asked her if she wanted to share, wanted to face things with me, wanted to see a husband who was honest, vulnerable, yet trustworthy. I thought I was protecting our love, but in fact I was killing it with my silence. My life was controlled by an invisible pressure I had imposed on myself. I had to always be strong, a solid pillar, a man who never faltered. I presumed that protecting Gianna from financial burdens or work difficulties was the best way to show my love. Whenever I encountered problems, I often tried to solve them myself, keeping worries and failures deep inside. I was afraid Gianna would be disappointed if she knew I was weak. I was afraid I wasn't qualified to be a husband or father if I couldn't shelter her. I thought a real man was always resilient, always protective, forgetting that sincerity and sharing are the most important things in a relationship. Therefore, when difficulties arose, especially the shock of losing my mother, I retreated even more, trying to endure alone, pushing Gianna further away while she needed to be heard, to be understood. I didn't realize that my silence was the wall separating us. Gianna didn't need a hero who was always strong. She needed a partner willing to share every burden, whether joy or sorrow. I missed countless opportunities to reconnect with her, to show her the hidden corners of my soul. Every time Gianna tried to reach out, tried to ask, I unconsciously pushed her away with vague answers, with lifeless nods. I thought I was protecting her, but in reality I was denying her the right to overcome difficulties with me, denying us the chance to become stronger together. Those memories, though painful, became the motivation for me to change. I'm no longer afraid to face the truth. I'm no longer afraid to admit my weaknesses. I learned to listen to myself, to listen to my inner emotions, and most importantly, I learned to listen to those around me, not just with my ears, but with my whole heart. Life slowly returned to normal, though the emotional wounds remained. I still remember Gianna, still remember Mom, but the pain is no longer destructive. It has become part of the growth process, a constant reminder of the lesson I learned. If you're listening, perhaps you're also experiencing loss, not necessarily a lover or partner, perhaps a family member, a belief, a hope. Perhaps it's your past self, a weaker, fearful version. I just want to say, sometimes losing everything isn't the end, but the beginning of a real life. A life where you can be yourself, no longer pretending, no longer holding anyone back with lies. A life where you are brave enough to face the truth no matter how harsh it may be. I no longer ask, why did she leave me at that time? That question only trapped me in pain and self-pity. I learned to accept that everything happens for a reason, and I must take responsibility for my mistakes. I realized that Gianna had her own pain, and her choice to leave was a way to protect herself, a way to find the peace I couldn't provide. I don't blame her. In fact, I secretly thank her for being strong enough to make that decision, no matter how painful it was. I just whisper every morning as the morning sun streams through the window, illuminating the white orchid and the lush green cactus like symbols of rebirth and hope. Thank you, Mom, for loving me, for teaching me how to get back up after every fall, even if the lesson came late. I will continue to live well to make you proud. Thank you, Gianna, for once staying, for giving me years of happiness, and for teaching me a valuable lesson about sincerity. I understand why you left, and I no longer blame you. I hope you find the happiness and peace you deserve. Thank you, myself, for not giving up, for being brave enough to face the truth, to heal the wounds, and to become a better version of myself. This journey isn't easy, but I know I will overcome it. And if you still have someone by your side right now, don't wait for a funeral or a divorce paper to learn to say, I need you. You're important to me. Don't go. Because sometimes, an embrace is all we need to stay. A heartfelt word, a sincere sharing, a timely handhold can save a lifetime, an entire relationship. Don't let pride or fear overshadow true love and connection. Cherish what you have and always be honest with the people you love most. Because life is short and genuine moments, meaningful embraces are priceless. They are the invisible threads that connect us, the foundation for a meaningful and happy life. Never trade truth for anything, because the price you'll pay will be incredibly steep. I don't know if Gianna and I will ever be able to reconcile. Perhaps not, because the wound of broken trust runs too deep, but I still hold on to a fragile ray of hope. Hope that one day she'll see my change, understand that everything I did came from love, even if it was a blind and misguided love. Hope that she'll forgive me and herself so that both of us can find true peace. I still look at her wedding ring on my desk like a permanent reminder of the lesson I learned about the price of silence and the importance of honesty. It's no longer a symbol of brokenness, but a symbol of growth and forgiveness. My story ends here. A story of weakness, of pride, and the heavy cost of silence in love. I lost one of the most important parts of my life, but I also learned a valuable lesson. Honesty, no matter how painful, is the strongest foundation for every relationship. If this story touched your heart, or if you have different thoughts on the choices I had to face, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Every opinion you share is a valuable contribution, helping me and others see life from many different angles. Let's share our stories and the lessons we've learned to grow stronger together. And if you found this story meaningful, please help me spread its message by liking this video and sharing it with anyone you think needs to hear it. Your support is a huge motivation for me to continue sharing more stories, more hard-won lessons from life. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on my latest videos full of emotional life stories, revealed secrets, and profound insights. Thank you all for listening. I wish you all happiness and peace, and always cherish the truth in your lives. Goodbye for now.